The killing of Allie Rice, the LSU senior, as she sat in her car waiting for a train to pass, is one of those tragedies that has caught the attention of the nation. Every publication, every network has covered this and are staying on top of it. Certainly in our area, the same thing. Ed Shahada is an American criminologist and sociologist, and you've researched race and crime, white and black in America, and also ethnicity, commonly Latino, in crime in America. Also doing work for the Department of Corrections. You head the department at LSU. It's a pleasure to have you. Let's discuss this murder. Why is this happening like this? And it seems to be things, maybe not the exact same thing, but things are happening that are different than they were before, it seems.
First, let me say this is so incredibly tragic and actually terrifying. I teach these kids. They're sitting in my front row and beyond. I see them every single day. And I have a daughter who's Allie's age. And so, yeah, when I read it, I was shaking. And it's terrifying.
Her whole life ahead of her, she was so proud about an internship and graduating. And she was just such an amazing girl with so much ahead of her.
It's just devastating. My staff, they're crying. She was a part of our family.
We've had a lot of murders in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Shreveport. And it is clear it's happening all over the world. Murder has gone up. Not the other crimes so much, but mainly murder. Mm-hmm. And it's pandemic related. As the pandemic went up and we all retreated from the streets and got locked into our homes, murder went up. And then as the pandemic crested, murder crested, and now there are signs that it's coming down. In Allie's case, I don't know the specific details of it, but it appears to be a random killing, and it is absolutely horrific, and I trust the police will find the perpetrator.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. There are people stepping forward with rewards, and the community's aware of it. Let me ask you, how is our state, we can look at Shreveport, Baton Rouge, New Orleans as the major cities, how are those cities handling crime? Are they doing good or good enough jobs of doing that?
If you take the top 10 most dangerous cities in America, and those are going to sometimes include Chicago, it's always St. Louis and Detroit and right. Baltimore and DC and so on.
The common suspects are always there.
Exactly.
And now we are.
3 of those cities are in Louisiana, right. New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Shreveport. We have a crime problem. Our state has the highest murder rate in the country. And the answer to that is not just incarceration, because if incarceration solved crime, we have the highest incarceration rate in the country. Right. We'd have the lowest crime rate. Right. So it is very bad right now.
So there's work that the cities can do much better. Look at New Orleans for a second. Carjackings, and some of them so grotesque you can't even imagine a woman's arm being ripped off because it was stuck in the seatbelt as they stole her car and she dies in the street.
Yeah, that crime was just unimaginable violence. Right now, the indications are that Baton Rouge, I don't know about Shreveport, but Baton Rouge, the homicide rate is coming down. It's nowhere near where it should be. But New Orleans is still on the way up. It's still rising.
Why?
Look, I love New Orleans, and I think we are very fortunate to have New Orleans in the state of Louisiana, and it's a great tourism place, and the people are wonderful, but it is a failed city from a public administration standpoint. All the predictors of crime, poverty, unemployment, despair, lack of resources, a disorganized public administration. This is the petri dish. It's a petri dish of the predictors of crime. And it's the most, and I believe that by the end of this year, it's quite possible that New Orleans will emerge as the most violent and dangerous city in America and one of the most violent cities in the world.
And one that rests on tourism too. So at some point, if that is the overriding impression of the city, well, people are not going to be attracted to that, I would think. How does Baton Rouge stack up? How does Shreveport stack up?
Well, Baton Rouge is probably 8th most violent city in America. And so, I mean, that's nothing to be proud of. I do understand. But it is coming down. At the moment, we are probably 16 homicides down from where we were last year. So I am confident that we will wrestle this to the ground in the next couple of years. It's going to take some time. One of the big drops that has occurred, well, I'll back up. One of the big increases in the types of murder we had in Baton Rouge was domestic violence murders. It's happened all over the country.
Right.
During the pandemic, when aggressors and victims cannot easily separate and they're chafing on each other during that isolation, you had an increase in domestic violence murders. To give you an idea, in Baton Rouge in 2019, we had 4 domestic violence murders. By 2021, we had 35.
Okay.
And now it's coming back down. We're probably cutting that number in half this year. So it's coming back down.
Baton Rouge is better organized to facilitate correcting issues that are problems?
Baton Rouge is better organized, period.
Okay. Than New Orleans.
Than New Orleans.
Right.
You know, I grieve with the people of New Orleans because I know the people there are trying very, very hard.
Yeah.
Baton Rouge is a better organized city. I'll give you an example. In 2012, when we had a high murder problem and it was gang related, the city organized with almost 120 different community organizations and a very active district attorney, Hiller Moore, and the sheriff, and so on. And we organized and went after gangs, and I was part of that task force. And we brought murder down 32% in 4 years. It can be done.
It can be done. Shreveport, for example, also able to handle what comes at it, even if it's in a bad way?
Yes, I believe they can.
Okay.
I believe they can. They do not have a long, long history of disorganization
Right.
and violence. So I believe they can wrestle this thing to the ground.
Much more we can talk about on this topic. Our time's up right now, but Ed, thank you so much for coming in, being here.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Baton Rouge police have announced that they are staking out certain areas of the capital city. They're expecting a spike in gang violence in the next several days.